Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You know, we did the last live stream, and right in the middle of the live stream, for some reason, I got about, I don't know, probably about 15 minutes in, and all of a sudden, everything went to hell in a handbasket in terms of connectivity. And I did a little testing, and it turns out, funny thing about having Wi-Fi connections that are on 5.8 gigahertz, when you turn on a 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter at 600 milliwatts about a foot away from your Wi-Fi antenna, they step on each other. So I actually did a little bit of testing, and it turns out that, yeah, when you turn on the old VTX at 600 milliwatts in proximity to a Wi-Fi computer, it creates problems. So who knew? Anyway, I hope y'all can hear me. And tonight what I wanted to do was spend a little time going over my iNav and OpenTx setup. So, yeah. Oh, there's the first battle. Yeah, David was in first. He got it 842. I saw him, Lynn. He's in there. So, hey, Lynn. Hey, David. Props off. Good evening. How you doing? Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. In a live situation, trying to figure out what the heck was going on with dropping connectivity all of a sudden. And yeah, it turns out that in order to do live streams with Wi-Fi involved, you have to not have VTX transmitters nearby. How about that? So anyway, what I thought I wanted to do tonight, and the reason I wanted to do this live again was to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. And the configuration, first, what I thought we'd do first is go over the OpenTx bit first, and then I would show you how OpenTx kind of interacts with iNav. So show you how those two bits work together. And then finally, we'll close out by taking a look at kind of what you'll see in the on-screen display. So whether you're using goggles or a monitor or whatever, you'll see what that looks like after we kind of go through this setup. And the one main thing that I want to point out is that this setup is designed to be a tuner setup. It's designed to allow you to go fly the plane, make adjustments in flight, and not have to land the plane in order to make additional adjustments, then launch and take off and adjust and figure out what you have to do again. So it took me a little bit of time to work this out. And if you guys have been following along, you know that I spent a lot of time tuning my first Nano Talon on iNav. And because I don't like the idea of landing, taking off, land, take off, land, take off, I came up with this configuration with the help of Mr. D Falling with Style. I'll admit that he did a really nice video on how to make this setup work, or at least portions of this setup work. But I'm not just going to cover the tuning bit. I'm going to cover the whole thing. I'm going to show you how I integrated my arm then execute feature, and how I manage things like exponential, because in iNav, you're not really supposed to fly with exponential because that's baked into your iNav configuration. So I'm going to show you those types of secrets as we go through this configuration. And to make it even sweeter for you, you don't have to go through and do all this on your own. I'm going to take my OpenTx configuration file and put it on rcvideoreviews.com with a link so you can download it. I'm also going to take my iNav 2.6 configuration file that I have set up right now for my Strix Goblin, and I'm going to put that on rcvideoreviews.com so that if you have an iNav computer and OpenTx, you can grab both those files, import them, and you'll start with what I've done as your baseline. And if you want to move from there, obviously, feel free. Now, I do want to throw one caveat out there, because it seems like every time I do an OpenTx video, somebody will come in and say, man, that's too hard, or that's too complex, or I don't like to do it that way. And that's fine. If you have a better way, or a way that you prefer, I'm not saying my way is the only way, or, it's my way or the highway or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you guys what works for me. So this arrangement works for me, and I've been enjoying this setup, and I've actually spent a little time tweaking it and refining it a little bit. So it works for me. If you can use any of the material within it, that's great. If you only use 2% or 5%, that's fine. If you don't want to use any of it at all and you just want to learn some techniques for programming, that's fine too. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying there's only one way to do this. There's so many ways to do this type of work in iNav and OpenTx that you just have to do the one that makes you happy. So that's all I'm trying to do here, is share what I found that works for me the best. All right. We're also not going to be focusing on the computer itself today, so I'm not going to try and pull that in and out of frame. We're really just looking at the radio and the iNav setup. So that's where we're going to be focusing our effort tonight. Okay, with that said, I want to go over the comments real quick and just see, make sure I got everybody. Props off, hello. Lynn was here, came back. Corey Perez, I got screwed up on what mode should be mixed together on iNav. Yeah, Corey, we'll touch on that. I actually have a bookmark on the desktop. We'll cover that. So hang in there. We'll go through that too. Yep, that's a very good question. Russ Cole says over 12 hours ahead of you both, being from New Zealand and all. Time zones are great. Okay, dude, that's so cool. And if I see changes, yeah, see, Lynn, I caught it though. So if I see changes, I'm going to move things around. So what happened was I just moved my video receiver, and apparently that interrupted the flow of things. But see, now I'm watching the network. So if I see it, now I know to move it. So anyway, here we go. I'm going to switch over to the big screen. And all right, let's zoom in a little bit. I want to make sure you guys can see the full radio setup here. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is start right at the beginning. And on the model setup page, this is all dependent on you. There's really nothing here that's iNav dependent. There's nothing on the setup screen that I would say that's germane to iNav specifically. So there's really nothing for me to show you there. Use your timers, use your timer sources, how you see fit, set your switch warnings, how you see fit. Notice that I have G up as a warning. There's a specific reason for that. And I have H down as a warning because my arm switch is always toward me. So when I start my radio up, I want my H down warning to go off if my H switch is not pulled toward me. Again, you can do it, works for you. This works for me. So the G up, I'll explain that as we get into the configuration, but I do have a warning for that as well. Other than that, there's really nothing else on the screen that's really germane to iNav specifically. So I'm going to move past this and go right into flight modes. So in flight modes, notice the only real change I made here was in flight mode 0 for trim 5 and 6. I set those to be off. So I don't use :0. I just highlight those and then set them to be off. All right. I got a little YouTube warning, but my frame rate and my network rate looks good. So hopefully we're not dropping anything, but my frame rate, my frame rate looks okay to me. I'm seeing 41 kilobits per second, and I've got a 46 millisecond latency with no drop packets. So, the resolution keeps dropping to 144. Huh. Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, hang tight, hang tight. Dang it. All right, I made a little adjustment in the settings for the software. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, this is not looking great. All right, one other thing I can do. I just turned off all the radios. So let's see if that helps. I just turned off all the radios, except for the one we're watching. So we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, so everything looks okay to me at this point. You guys let me know. Corey, you should get broadband dial-up is killing this. Yeah, it's actually what the good news is. I learned it's not the network. It's the freaking radios that are doing it. So in the live session, the radios interfere with the Wi-Fi. That's what's going on. And I'll show you guys too. I actually put tinfoil around the video transmitter to try and get it to stop doing that. Anyway, we'll go back to the radio configuration. So here I am with flight mode 0, and all I did in flight mode 0 was turn off T5 and T6. And the reason for that is because I use T5 and T6 for setting for the tuning aspects. So being able to, Lynn, this doesn't have low power. The one that I'm using right now is just a fixed power outlet. So anyway, the T5 and T6 are used for the tuning module or the tuning setup, and I'll cover that in a little bit. Okay. Use external module but remove. Yeah, it's turned off. I I don't know what the question mark is, Corey, but all I did was turn off the the video transmitter. So I'm going to leave it at that, and hopefully we can press forward. All right. So back on topic, flight mode 0, I turned off T5 and T6. That's all I've done under the flight modes. And next we can move on to the inputs. Now, here's a little catchy thing on the inputs that I wanted to share with you, because in iNav, they have Expo set up in iNav itself. So what I ended up doing, and by the way, I've turned off global rates on, sorry, global functions. This whole thing is throwing me through a little bit of a loop, especially watching the comments. Anyway, I've turned off using dual rates, and I've also turned off global functions. And the reason you do that is because I don't want things like the instant trim to accidentally get bumped and trim my airplane while I'm flying. That's bad for iNav. I'm looking. It looks to me like we've got a heck of a good bit rate going out. Are you guys still good here on 1080p? Thumbs up for effort. It looks to me like everything should be working okay. So I don't know. I'm hoping you guys are able to see everything okay. So what I did on my input screen is I used my 6-position switch, and you can see I've got position 1. That's now the switch that I use for my rates. All right. So if you notice on this first line, aileron 1, I've got 100% with an expo of 10. That's my manual mode. When I'm in anything but manual mode, that's the exclamation 6 position 1. When I'm in anything but that, we're simply at 100% with no expo and no modification to rates. I do the same thing on the elevator. I just give myself a little bit of expo on the elevator when the 6 position switch is in position 1. And I give myself 100% with no expo when I'm not in 6 position 1. That's it. That's the only thing I've done on rates. All right, the next page is mixes. And you can see on the mixes, the first 4 channels, aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder, are all set at 100%. All right, there's no modifiers for those at all. iNav doesn't like modifiers. Remember, you can set your weights and expos directly in iNav, so there's no point in setting them in your radio. Then notice I use GV5 max for my mode switch. We'll cover that in just a little while. That's actually part of another full-length video I did on using the ARM and then execute mode for iNav, and I'll talk about that in some detail. Notice I've got a switch on for OSD on channel 6, and then 7 is my ARM switch. So on channel 7, my SH switch is up here on the top right, and that's how I arm and disarm my motors. And then as we scroll down, notice on channel 10, I've got a GV1 set for max, and that's my adjustment parameter. I'll cover that when we get into the tuner page. And then channel 11 is simply converting that's the one that converts T6 to be a toggle up and a toggle down. It's simply a momentary up and a momentary down. That's all that's for. So that's my mixer setup. And again, you don't have to try and screen capture this stuff. I will put this out there as a link on RC Video Review so you can download it and you can look at it in Companion. You don't even have to install it on your radio. You can look at it in Companion. Okay, so that's it for the mixer screen. This is kind of a key one. Notice on the outputs, it's really important in outputs to spend a little time here, because when you're in iNav, and I'd like to show you by flipping over to the desktop why this matters in iNav. So in iNav, you have to have your receiver showing 1500 as the midpoint, and then you want 2000 as the high end and 1000 as the low end. And you set those values by using your output screen on your radio. So here's an example. My ailerons right now are 998. They're not stopping at 1000. So in order to fix that, you simply go into your output screen, you hold your aileron stick where it needs to be, and then you make an adjustment on that output until you are where you're supposed to be. So one click over, and that got me to 1000 on my aileron. And then the same thing with your elevator. You should be at 1000 for that as well on the low end and 2000 on the high end. So iNav expects that so that you have your upper and lower limits set correctly for the computer. So it's kind of good that mine were off just a touch there, and that gave you a look at how you make that adjustment. So now you can see when I'm rolling left, I see 1000 on my receiver screen, and when I pull full elevator, I also see 1000 on the elevator. So that's an important little bit on the output screen, and you do want to use that output high and or low and high values to ensure that you have the correct output and midpoints on your receiver page in iNav. So I'm going to go back to the big camera now. And that's it on the output screen. So next we'll skip over to curves. I have nothing in place there. The global variables. Okay, here's where it starts to get a little bit tricky. The first global variable 1, that's my adjustment variable for when we're in the screen and making adjustments to PIDs. So let me highlight this and hit edit. And I want to show you that the min and max on this is -100 and 20. And it starts out at -100. So when I turn the radio on, I want the default value to be -100. And basically what this does is it gives me 12 steps. As I push this switch forward 12 times, it moves the adjustment knob over 12 steps. I'll show you that in iNav so you have it. But that global variable GV1 is the one that moves my cursor over on each selection item on the tuner page. And it's not only for PIDs, I also now have it to adjust my board pitch angle. So that's what's in there for the adjustment knob. And that's a per row thing, by the way. And I'll explain that again when I show you that setup in iNav. Another global variable I've got set up is global variable 4 and 5. This one goes back to the use of the arm then execute for the mode switch. So if you watch me press the buttons up top, you'll see, I'm going to turn this down so it doesn't talk over me. You'll see mode going 60, -20, 20, 60, and then 100. Okay. So what happens is every time I press one of these mode switches up top, let me zoom out a little bit so I can make sure you see that. Okay. So every time I press one of these mode switches up top, you can see that global variable 4 change, and it goes in increments of 40. So -20 for the third switch, 20 for the fourth switch, 60 for the fifth one, and then finally return to home is set at 100. So that mod switch is the one that actually gets changed when I operate my 6-position switch up top. And then global variable, now let me show you what that looks like in the setup so you can see it. All I do in here is set a value of -100 and +100. So -100 for the min, +100 for the max. That's it. And then same thing with the EXE, the only modification, again, -100 and 100. Okay. So that's it for those two global variables. I'm using 3 global variables in this setup. I have GV1 for moving my cursor on the screen, and then I have GV4 and GV5 involved in setting my flight modes with the arm and then execute option on the 6-position switch. All right, the next screen, the logical switch. This is a real simple logical switch configuration. All this does, my SE switch, if you remember in my mixer, my SE switch is right here. And when I flick the SE switch into the middle position, and then I press the 6 up and 6 down right here, that'll activate L1 and L2. And I'll bring up the channel monitor for you so you can see it. And I think it's, let's see, it's channel 12? 11. Okay, you can see when I flick TX T6 right here, watch channel 11. See how it just goes up, and then when I let go, it goes off. So that's a momentary switch up and a momentary switch down. All right, so there's T6 down and there's T6 up. That's all that logical switch does, is it sends a full pulse to max. If you remember back in the mixer, right here on channel 11, it sends when logical 1 is activated, it sends a full pulse. When logical 2 is activated, it sends a full negative pulse. That's all it does. And that's the thing that actually changes the variable in the tuner setup. Again, I know I keep saying I'll show you, but trust me, I will. You'll see it in just a minute. We're getting there. Okay, so that's all I've got for logical switches. And again, those switches are only active when the SE switch is in the middle position. That's it. The only time it's active is when it's in the middle position. When it's not in the middle position, I can press this, and I just pushed it up. So I just pushed SE here up. When it's not in the middle position, it doesn't activate. 6D activates, but notice the logical switch doesn't because I don't have SE in the middle position. Okay? That's all I've got for logical switches. Now we've got some stuff to cover. The special functions are quite a handful. Okay, the first special function, GV5, that one is intended to set my mode switch to manual mode. So when I turn the radio on, the first thing that happens is the special functions activate -100 as a value for GV5. And that's the one that I use for conveying my mode to the airplane. And then anytime I hit 6 position switch number 1, I also adjust GV5 for -100. So if I hit the 6 position switch spot 1 right there, you can see that highlights right there. And if I look at GV5 on my global variables page, you can see that it is set to -100. Now, if I move it to the next one, you'll notice that it doesn't actually make a change. And the reason for that is because I have that arm and then execute switch set up. And you can see after I hit the execute switch, it went to -60. I'll cover that in just a minute. Again, there was a full-length video on that trick on the channel. So if you want to see the full video on that, make sure you look that one up. Okay, so anytime I make an adjustment with the 6 position switch, the only thing it does is adjust the global variable 5 with 2 exceptions. I made 2 exceptions in my case. The first exception is manual mode. When I go into manual mode, that means I'm out flying around. Let's say I'm in loiter mode. When I always know manual is the first one. I can find that real easy because I just take my finger off the throttle and slide over the first button. I hit it. I know that's manual mode. That one activates instantly. And the same thing with my return to home mode. That one also activates instantly. So it doesn't matter if I hit this one or this one. They're the first ones that I get to with my thumbs. They're executed instantly. No other button press is required. The ones in the middle, they can be a little bit more tricky to figure out, especially when you're first learning it. And that's the arm before execute mode. So let me show you what that looks like on the radio. So as you look at this, you'll see that every other option in here is adjust GV4. You see how it says adjust GV4, 4, 4, 4. So that's numbers 2, 3, and 4. Those all adjust GV4. 6 position 5 also adjusts GV4. Notice the values are -60, -20, 20, and 60. And then when I hit 6 position number switch 6, I adjust GV5 and GV4. That's return to home. So when I hit return to home, it goes return to home instant, no execute switch required. All right. Whoops, wrong page, wrong button. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is that for every one of these 6 position switches, I'm playing a track. So I play a track manual mode, but also notice on P1, I get manual mode enabled. So I know instantly when I put it in manual mode, it's automatically enabled. All the rest of them just say position hold, cruise mode, angle mode, acro mode. They don't say enabled, and that doesn't happen until after I hit the switch that actually executes or makes that mode go active, which is my SF. You can see SF down copies global variable 1, which is what gets set for every one of these mode switches. Anytime there's a mode switch adjustment for everything but manual mode and return to launch mode, GV4 is modified, and then GV5 is adjusted by the value in GV4. Okay. So here's how this plays out. I'm going to turn the radio up and I'm going to move it close to the mic so you can hear it. Maybe I'll just turn it up. Hopefully you can hear it like this. And I'll show you how I operate. Let me move the mic so it can get as close to this thing as I can. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just do manual mode first.
Manual mode enabled.
Okay, manual mode enabled. And I'm going to bring up the screen because I want you to see also what goes on iNav. I'm going to go over here to modes. Okay, so here's the modes. And remember what I said. If I press any other button but manual mode or return to home, nothing's going to happen. So when I hit position hold, listen to the prompt.
Position hold.
So she says position hold, but notice it did not go into position hold. It didn't move. You see the indicator is still right here. It doesn't go into position hold until I hit my execute switch, which is my momentary switch over here on the left-hand side. So when I hit that, then it will go into position hold.
Enabled.
Okay, and she says enabled. And notice on the screen, position hold moved. Now if I hit the next, say, I don't know, 4.
Angle mode.
Oh, I don't want angle mode. I wanted
Cruise mode.
cruise mode. So that lets you move around and
Acro mode.
to find the thing that you wanted by pressing these buttons
Angle mode.
and not being impacted until you hit the execute button. So I think I just put it on angle mode, and when I hit the execute button,
Enabled.
you'll see it jump all the way over, and here we are in angle mode. Okay, now watch return to home, because remember what I told you, return to home and manual mode are the only two that don't require any extra presses. So I'm going to press return to home now.
Return to launch. Enabled.
Okay, so see how it said return to launch enabled? What happens is it moves all the way to return to launch mode and enables it right away. No extra button presses required. All right, the reason I did that for 2 reasons. The first one is because I can always find return to home because it's the first button on the right. And I can always find manual because it's the first button on the left. And honestly, those are the 2 what I would consider to be emergency modes. So if I hit manual mode,
Manual mode.
that's me saying I want control of the plane. Give me the plane. And if I'm saying that, I don't really want to be fiddling around with buttons. But if I'm out flying around and I'm in loiter mode,
Position hold.
position hold, and it's just spinning around, I say, okay, position hold's fun. Let's go back to cruise mode. It gives me an opportunity of being able to make sure I've got the mode I want before I actually hit the select button. And then when I hit the select button, there we go. Okay, speaking of the modes, I think that pretty much covers the special functions for the modes. I've got a couple more special functions I want to cover, so I'm going to switch over to the big desktop first. Okay, so on the big desktop, let's see, we've got our values where we're adjusting our global variable 5 with the value of global variable 4, and we're saying enabled. Okay, so that pretty much covers the modes. Again, I'll make this available for you, so don't worry about trapping every detail. You'll be able to pull this into Companion and play around with it. Okay, the next one that I wanted to show you guys is something that I set up for doing servo auto trim and auto tune. Those are 2 things that you want to do on the plane when you first set it up. It's a tuning setup, okay? When you're done, it'd be really easy to come in here and just take these values out. Basically, what I want to show you is that I dedicated a switch G, and I'm using G for both modes, auto trim and auto tune. The thing about it is that when you're in auto trim, you want the airplane to be in manual mode. When you're in auto tune, you want it to be in Acro mode. So I have this radio set up to use SG middle, and when I put it in SG middle, it's going to force the rate. It's going to force the rate to be for the auto trim. It's going to force it to be in manual mode, and it's going to enable auto trim. So let me. Oh, how about that? That's cool that iNav erased that for me. That's okay. Let me just grab it real quick. I can set it real fast. There we go. So we'll switch over, and let me go to the other desktop so you can see both of these side by side. Okay. So here's SG, and when I have SG up, everything's deactivated, and all the mode switches work the way we just covered. Everything that we just did works the way we covered it. Now, if I decide, all right, I want to do an auto trim function, notice that I've got auto trim right here in blue. When I pull my SG switch to the middle, it's going to do 2 things. Number 1, it's going to force manual mode, because when you do auto trim, you want to be in manual mode. And the second thing it's going to do is enable auto trim on channel 9. So SG middle. Okay, you can see that auto trim went into blue and manual mode also went into blue. Okay, so if I turn SG off, it goes back to where it was before. Okay, so that's the first one. And then the next one is auto tune. And that one, you want it to be in Acro mode, and you need auto tune to be enabled. So that's right down here. So if I pull SG all the way forward, you can see the auto tune on channel 9 goes onto the auto tune bracket that I set up. And then we're also in Acro Mode, which is basically no other mode selected. So I don't have angle mode. I don't have alt hold. I don't have position hold. I don't have return to home. I don't have nav cruise. I don't have manual. Okay. So when I flick that G switch all the way toward me, I get both auto tune enabled and Acro Mode enabled, and that's what you want for auto tune. Okay, we'll go back to the big camera. And that pretty much covers these modes. Those are all designed to put it in the correct mode for auto trim and auto tune. And those are modes you'll have to read up on how you're supposed to save them because they are different processes. So I recommend learning the process, but the whole idea is that this switch and this OpenTx configuration is designed to put the mode and the trim mode or the tune mode in the correct state in order for you to have the correct arrangement set up on iNav to conduct auto trim and auto tune. All right, let's see here. The second section is the auto tunes. It's the second half of those two things that we just discussed. So up top here, the first half is the training mode, and then oh, by the way, if SG is up, it deactivates everything. Okay, so there's auto tune. Yep, that's auto trim, servo auto trim. I'm sorry, I still get them mixed up a little bit. That's servo auto trim, and this is auto tune mode. Okay, and then the last thing that I've got down here is the setup for enabling SD logs. So anytime I turn on my throttle switch, I'm SD logging. I have SD logging on the Tyrannus. You also would be a really good idea if you have a black box configuration on your plane and you have an SD card on the plane to put that there as well. So when you arm your radio, go ahead and turn on your black box. That'd be a really simple add in iNav. I didn't do it on mine because I haven't been running SD cards, but if you are putting SD cards in your planes, it'd be a really good option to put that in right here. Okay. The last one is real simple. These are the switches that are involved in adjusting the screen for the PID tuning. All right. And I'm going to show you that. I keep saying I'm going to show you that, but I will show you. I'm going to show it to you. So in this one, all we're doing is we start out when SE switch is not in the middle position, it resets the cursor to the home position. You can use that or not use that. When I was heavily into tuning, I actually turned this one off. In fact, I kind of like that one off. But when I started having some issues, I think I was messing around with the OSD and it started to fail on me. So I ended up turning it back on. But anyway, you'll see here that when SE is not in the middle position, it sets global variable 1 to -100. And all that does is reset the cursor back to the top. And then you can see that when 5 is pressed up, GV1 is incremented by 10, and when 5 is pressed down, it's decremented by 10. And all that does is move the cursor block by block. Okay. And then the last thing I did in special functions, because I'm no longer using global functions because I don't want to accidentally instant trim my plane. That's bad for iNav. So I'm ignoring my global functions. I ended up putting my volume on and using my volume knob. So that's it on the special functions. I have no Lua set up on this at all. And then you can see I've got all my telemetry values coming in, no problem from the radio. And I covered that in the video we did last night. So all the telemetry values are there. Everything's happy. And that's it. That's my radio configuration top to bottom. Now I'd like to show you how some of this stuff works. All right. We already kind of covered modes, but let's go through the modes real quick just to make sure everyone's got a good beat on those. And I'll switch over to the big desktop. I'm also going to take a breather and check questions. Okay. So let's see. It seems like the stream has been going okay. That definitely tells me it's radio. If I have anything lined up wrong on this desk, man, it's going to blow up my Wi-Fi. So that's definitely, I think, what's going on, because everything was fine. We got started and I moved some stuff around and everyone said, hey, wait, we're stuttering. Okay. Let's see here. Corey says I had to click the gear cog and adjust back to 1080. Yeah, it should be only 1080. That should be what it is. Martin says good now. Okay, good. Oh, could we use the T5 to lock the arm switch like you did with the 6 position switch to execute, stays armed? Yeah, you could. You can just do a variation, Corey, on what I've shown you here tonight. But yeah, similar concept. You can use T5 to definitely lock if you want to. That's no problem. Also, this mod you're talking about, instead of using T5 for could press for selection and hold for execute, pushing T5 to execute. Yeah, you could do that. The main thing is just take anywhere where I've done T5 up and replace it with, your T5. You have to have a logical switch for both being pressed. But yeah, you can make changes in this if you want to. The whole point is that use a momentary like you're supposed to use a momentary. Philip, hi, glad you can make it. Philip's from Australia, so he's hanging out with us. It's good to have our Australian contingent available. Props off says hello. Corey says need to calibrate your 6 position switch first. Yeah, definitely. Yep, he posted the link saying that it's a good idea to calibrate, and that's always, to me, that goes without saying. The first 3 things you should do when you get the radio all involve calibration. So yeah. Okay, I haven't seen any questions about what I've covered so far, so I'm going to go back up into iNav, and I'd like to show you guys the modes that I use, because Robert says, "Can we find better looking ugly stepsisters?" No, I don't know. I could bring the T18 out, Robert. Would that do? Maybe bring the T18 out for you, or maybe the TX12. Okay, let's cover the modes real quick. So notice on the top on ARM, you see I've got channel 7. So that's my mixer, my ARM switch, and that's right here. So this is where I put my ARM switch, and that's on channel 7. Now, what I really wanted to get into were the modes, though, because the modes, it just takes a little bit of understanding. And I think for me, the way I like mine set up initially is in the first position, I like manual mode. And you can see that under manual mode, that's right here. When I have my first position button pressed, it doesn't need the execute function. It just goes straight into manual mode. That says John has the airplane. Give me the airplane. I don't want the computer fooling with the airplane anymore. I don't like what I see. That's basically what manual mode means. I want control. That's what it says. It reminds me of my Navy days when the aircraft commander, if he didn't like something, he'd say, "I've got control." And the junior pilot was like, "Yes, sir." And he let go of the stick. So manual mode. I like mine to be right here on the left. You can put yours wherever you want, but for me, I like it right there on the left. Okay, second mode. Now keep in mind, going forward until we get to the end, it won't happen until I hit the execute switch, okay? So second mode I like is position hold.
Position hold.
Now I'm going to execute that one.
Enable.
All right, and here's what position hold looks like. This is a concept called stacking, okay? The reason I wanted to show you this is because you don't need to have alt hold for position hold, by the way. Position hold has altitude hold baked in. I just wanted to show it to you. It's there to show you what stacking looks like. If you wanted to mix 2 modes together, you can. There's no real reason to do that in this case. So iNav didn't save something for me. Somewhere along the line, it missed a save. But you don't need altitude hold for position hold. Position hold has altitude hold baked in. We will cover that in a little while. I'm going to bring you to a web page that's kind of like a crib sheet for all these modes. Okay, so hang tight. We'll get to that in just a minute. But my second position that I like is position hold. And all that does is loiter. So whatever your current altitude is, it'll loiter in your configured radius and the current altitude. It picks that spot in 3D space, and it will circle and hold its altitude. That's what position hold does. Okay, loiter mode. That's what they call it. Okay, the next one is cruise mode. This is the one, I like this one a lot too. Now this one I do use stacking, and let me execute this one. Okay, so see how my cursor jumped over to cruise mode? This one you do want some stacking, because in cruise mode, by putting altitude hold and cruise mode together, 2 things happen. What? My screen just locked on me. I must have hit the lock button on my keyboard. I did. Okay, I'm back. Okay, in cruise mode, 2 things happen. One, the cruise mode is meant to lock your heading. So it maintains your heading. It uses GPS information. If you're using a compass, it will use that as well. But the main thing is it locks its heading. So when you flick it into cruise mode, whatever heading you have it set on, that's what it grabs. But Cruise mode does not maintain your altitude by default. So here's where stacking comes in. You can see that I've got altitude hold stacked together with cruise mode. So you can do that. And the computer will recognize that and it'll say, okay, we're in cruise mode and we're in altitude hold mode. And what that really effectively does, it locks the plane in 3D space. So it maintains its heading and its altitude. And because it's a stabilized mode, it will keep the wings level. And I can tell you, once you get this dialed in on iNav, it's very effective. When I was done with my nanotalon tuning on a kind of windy day, I was seeing the heading held within a degree and the altitude held within about 4 feet, which is as good as anything I've ever flown. So that's the cruise mode. Angle mode. Angle mode's really not one you're going to fly around with too often because it is basically a self-leveling mode or an auto-level mode, but I kind of like it just for testing purposes. So if I see something I don't like, I'll put it in angle mode and say, is the plane flying flat? And if it's not, then you have to figure that out. It's probably you have a board alignment problem or something else going on, but you've got to figure that out. So I only use angle mode only for testing purposes. Again, part of the tuner setup. So here's the bottom line with angle mode. If you put it in angle mode and the plane flies flat and straight, you're probably in pretty good shape for the rest of your modes. You got to think of iNav as kind of this building block. If your basic modes like angle mode aren't working correctly, the stuff above it's not going to work correctly either. So make sure that when you're in angle mode, and I like to use angle mode just to verify that everything else is set correctly, that the plane is flat and it's not pitching like crazy or turning like crazy. You know, that's what you're after with angle mode. So that's why I use it.
Acro mode.
Acro mode. Acro mode's another good mode. Notice in acro mode, oh, by the way, one other thing in angle mode, not a bad idea to use alt hold for that. So that you should have alt hold for angle mode as well. That's a good way to test your altitude holding or your pitch hold as well. Okay, so Acro mode is probably the mode you'll fly in the most because this is the one where you can put the plane in a given configuration, let go of the sticks, and the plane tries to maintain that configuration. So if you say, I want to pitch up, if you have an angle mode or acro mode, you say, I want to pitch up, it'll hold that pitch up. If you want to turn right, it'll hold the turn right. So acro mode's actually kind of a fun way to fly. I actually kind of like it. It's kind of that hands-off mode. It's not 3D cruise, so it's not going to lock your course for you. And if the wind buffets, it doesn't go back and readjust to, so say you have a course of 270 and the wind moves you, the plane will level itself, but it doesn't necessarily go back to 270. So that's the difference. So angle mode is that self-level mode. That's what you get with angle mode. And of course, the last mode that I use is return to home. And again, I don't have an execute required for that one. If I hit return to launch, that means I want it to come back right now. Clay says, I land an acro allows for a better flare. Yeah, man, acro is really good. It's a really good one for landing. He's right about that. Clay's right about that. I really like landing in acro mode on iNav. It's really good. So you get the plane set up for a nice gentle approach. You pull that power back. The plane will handle your heading. It'll handle if you have yaw enabled, it'll handle your heading. It'll keep your wings level. And all you've got to do right at the end is just pull a nice little flare in. It's really actually quite nice. So he's right. I do like to land in acro mode. Okay, so those are my modes, and I've already covered the auto trim and auto tune. The next thing I want to get to are adjustments, because this is kind of the big one for tuning. And I want to just show you guys real quick what the adjustment screen looks like. And this is where all the magic happens. This is the in-flight cool stuff that you get to do. So in the adjustment screen, remember, you can see I've got channels 10 and channels 11. Okay, let me go back to the mixer and show you channels 10 and 11 real fast. So channel 10, that's my GV1, and that's the one that I use for T5. So when I move T5, it has 12 steps. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's manifested itself right here on these little blue dots. You'll see it when we start moving it. And then remember that T6 is the one that is used to adjust the thing that we're on. So if I move my cursor to roll P adjustment by using T5, or let's say I move it to pitch P adjustment by using T5, then once I'm on that value, I can either move it up or down with T6. This is the secret sauce. And again, I don't want to take any credit for this. This is Mr. D falling with style. He came up with this. I simply copied what he did, and it's brilliant. It works really well. In fact, I expanded on it a little bit, and I added my board pitch in there because I could fit it. So it's really good to put that board pitch alignment option in there as well. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like on the screen. Remember, this value is only activated when SE is in that middle position. So I have to put SE in the middle position first, and now watch what happens when I increment T5. Okay, so here, if you watch these little blue dots, when I press T5, it's going to move over. So right now, I'm at this value that says 1000. When I click it, it's 1010. So we're under roll I. When I click it again, we're under roll feed forward. When I click it again, we move down to the next row, and we're on pitch P. I'll click it again. Now we're on pitch I. Click it again. We're on pitch feed forward. And then we just keep going. You see how the blue dot keeps moving through these positions? There's position ZP, position ZI, position ZD, and then finally the last one is board pitch alignment. So if that's confusing to you, don't worry. I'm about to fire up the monitor and let you see what it looks like on the monitor screen. The one last thing I want to point out on the radio is that I use SE. Oh, notice how when I put SE, how all these values went, this little indicator went all the way back to the beginning. That's that negative 100 I was telling you about. When SE goes to negative 100, this gets reset back down to the first position. Okay. So even though I just put it back to the middle, we're still starting right back up here on roll P again. And I have to click through all these values again. And as soon as I turn that off, my tuner page, as soon as that's turned off, it's back to 0 again. All right. So that's it for the adjustments page. The last thing I want to show you is my OSD setup. And I went through the configuration on how to load up the FreeSky Pixel OSD firmware. And that's the one that gives you the graphics on the side. They don't even show it in the configurator right now. They don't show it, but you'll see it in a minute on the screen when I fire the screen up. Okay. I got to connect the battery again and get the transmitter going, but I will show you those boxes again, and then I'll show you the tuner screen on how we navigate through. So I think it's time to move over and do that. So we're kind of coming to the end now. I'm going to go ahead and pull the monitor in front. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to zoom in on the big camera. And I'm going to stop and grab a drink real quick because I've been babbling for an hour straight. Hold on. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to hold this thing up, so hopefully it doesn't interfere with the Wi-Fi. I'm going to just check the network real quick, make sure I don't start dropping packets. Look at that, man. As soon as I turned it out, I started dropping packets. Isn't that something? I'm dropping. Okay. Well, I'm not kidding, man. I have, look at, I have see the tinfoil? That tinfoil is over my transmitter. So forget about the video quality. I'm purposely trying to destroy my video quality. So you guys are going to have to give me a pass on that. Okay. I think we're okay. It looks like we're okay. I don't see any drop packets. The stream rate seems plenty high. So I think we're okay. Okay. Is it buffering? It says okay on my side. Let me see here. I just want to check my bit rate. Yeah, Corey, I have 1.3 actually. All right. Are you guys okay? We getting good video? Man, that 5.8 does a number. It looks okay on my side. I'm getting really low latency, no drop packets, and my frame rate looks real high on the way out. So it looks like I'm okay. To me, it looks okay. I can't see anything. Okay, I'm going to take that as we're okay to go. And let me go ahead and arm this. And you can see that I've got the thing ready to go. It's in Acro Mode. Now, I want to switch over and show you. Remember, I use SE for my toggle on my on-screen display. So I'm going to go to my alternate layout. Also, remember, see the boxes there? That's, again, forget about the video quality. I don't care about that right now. But see the boxes on the sides there? I've got the box right here on the left and the box right here on the right. That's ground speed and that's altitude. And the box is done. That comes in when you upgrade the first key OSD. I get that question a lot. You guys would be surprised how often I get that. I hope I'm not being too redundant about it, but in case you want to know how to do that, that's how I do it. Okay. And I think there'll be more graphics to come too, by the way. So hang tight. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and flick my E switch to the middle, and this is the magic, okay? And this monitor doesn't align correctly. When I'm in my goggles, that flashing 10 is perfectly where it's supposed to be. So you should be able to see that flashing 10 right there. That 10, like when I'm on my goggles, it's down here on this row. So the monitor is not quite scanning right. But anyway, let me just go through and hit T5, and you can see when I hit T5, see how I'm going from pitch P to pitch I to pitch feed forward. And now I'm going to hit T5 up again, and I'm on PXYP and PXYI and PXYD. Now I'm in PZP and PZI and PZD. And then notice right there, that's my angle pitch for my board. So if I put it in angle mode and set my throttle to fixed throttle, and I see it drifting on altitude, I can sit right here and make a correction. How cool is that? I mean, that is pretty trick, because that's one of those things that has to be right. They mention it in the tuning guide, and you do want it to be accurate in the tuning in your plane, but they don't mention it until like phase 3. To me, I think this is one of the first things you should do is get it up in the air and make sure that angle pitch is adjusted right on the spot. That's one of the first things you should do. So, and you can also, by the way, if your position hold XY is good, you could take that entire position hold XY line out right there. You could erase that and also put in your board roll angle as well, which I might do that too. I'll go fly this plane and see how it does holding its altitude. And if everything's copacetic there, I might go ahead and replace maybe that PXY with the board roll level as well. So you can adjust both of those in flight. And by the way, all you got to do when you're done is land the plane. And when you land the plane, you save those values. You just go into the menu. So if you disarm the plane, you put the rudder in the middle position, the stick all the way to the left, you push the elevator up, and then you can just push the elevator stick up and hit save and reboot. And when you do that, whatever values you changed get saved to the configuration. So that is the tuning setup, and that's the gold. You guys have flown iNav, you know that's gold, right? Because when you can go into your tuning screen and make these parameter adjustments in flight, man, does it save you time. You can instantly get a result and say, yep, that mattered or didn't. And if you're up there just tweaking and changing stuff without this ability, then you have to land it, make the change, then go up and evaluate and say, well, is that better or worse than last time? But man, I'll tell you what, talk about saving time. If you've ever been frustrated with PID tuning, this is a really good tool to help. Also notice there's one other thing here too, and that's pitch to throttle. So I may misspeak on this. I want to try and be as clear as I can on it, but pitch to throttle goes something like this. You put it in angle mode with altitude hold, and you set the throttle at a fixed position. Say, nope, I lied. See, that's not the way you do it. You put it in 3D cruise mode, and that takes over your throttle. Then you pull elevator, and if your 3D speed slows down, you need to increase your pitch to throttle. If the 3D speed speeds up, you need to decrease it. So that's another value that I think is adjustable, is the pitch to throttle ratio. That'd be another really good one to put up on this row for when you decide to tune that value as well. But this one also seems a lot easier to make adjustments for too. So the reason I have this tuning page set up like this is so that I can see when I do a climb in 3D cruise mode, what my 3D speed is and what my pitch to throttle is. So if, again, in that 3D cruise mode with altitude hold, if you pull elevator and your speed, your 3D speed decreases, this number has to go up, okay? And then I've got a couple of other ones in here that'll help with things like setting the pitch angle on the board. So roll angle, pitch angle, and that's the throttle percentage. So this is the one where you put it in acro mode, or no, you put it in angle mode with altitude hold. You set your throttle to a fixed value, and then you look and see if the pitch changes. If the pitch is, say, 3 or 4, you take the average value of what you see on the pitch, and you add that to your pitch offset. That's how you get your pitch angle set in. And so you can imagine how nice this would be to have in flight. Can you imagine just setting your throttle at 50% and then watching your pitch? If your pitch is at 7, you put in 3.5 here. And then if it goes down to 2, you add 1, so make it 4.5, and then this should zero out, and you're done. Now imagine trying to do that by landing, flying, landing, flying, landing, flying, right? Can you imagine how annoying that would be? That's the benefit of this tuner setup. You know, you guys may go, man, that guy hits his geek on, but the computers, they have the capability. Why not take advantage of it? And again, I'm going to give one more shout out to Mr. D, Falling with Style, because he's the one that turned me on to this concept in the first place. Once I saw, oh, I see what you guys are doing there, then that was it, man. After that, it's like game on. You know, now as I learn iNav more and more, and maybe I get better starting values, right? I realize, you know, the reason I was having to adjust this is because I had that wrong in the first place. Well, maybe next time I'll just set the right values in there and I won't even have that in my tuner setup, and I'll just have my pitch angle and my roll angle and maybe my pitch to throttle, and that's it. And I'll have this sucker dialed in no time. So I think that's it. I'm going to turn the radio stuff off so it doesn't continue to blow up my feed. But I forgot one other thing I wanted to show you guys before I do cut it completely off. And that's my cruise, that's my cruise OSD. So I have 3 OSDs set up. That's my main flying where I'm paying attention to what's, you know, all the details. That's my tuner screen. And this one is just cruising around, you know, just out enjoying the scenery. In fact, I may even reduce this one a little bit more. Because the whole idea behind the cruise mode, or, you know, just the scenery mode or tourist mode, is having very little of the computer in your face and having that all gone just so you can enjoy the view. But yeah, just a real simple setup with sidebar, speed, altitude, voltage, and amps, and my mode. That's it. So 3 different setups on iNav for the OSD. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to unplug it. Okay. All right, everything's shut down. I'm going to go back to the desktop now. And let's see. I guess I want to make sure Robert has a vision, a sight for Robert. So there we go, Robert. Look at that pretty girl, man. Look at that pretty church radio. What do you got against the church radio? I don't know, guys. Robert calls this one of the ugly stepsisters, the beautiful, pristine church radio. Okay, let me go back to iNav real quick, and let's see if I can connect here. And I wanted to give you the modes. I wanted to show you that's another one. Real quick down here, OSD Alt 2 and Alt 3. On my mixer, I have SE enabled right here. SE right here is enabled on channel 6. And this is how I set up mode alternate OSD 2 and 3. So you can set up different screens. And once you've done that in the OSD, you can come over to the OSD tab, and under the layouts, I've got alternate layout 2. That's my tuner screen. And then alternate layout 3. That's my tourist screen. All right. Robert just puked. Hey, I'm glad I could be there for you, brother. All right. All right, let's see. I want to go back and check some of the comments here and see what I missed here. All right, I left off with Corey saying you need to calibrate. Yes, definitely calibrate. Robert complaining about the radio, so that's good. I'm new to iNav. What are the usual usage of momentary switch? Alvin, there is. I'm going to say there is no usual. That really, you got to realize that with these 2 pieces of software, OpenTx and iNav, you really have a lot of flexibility here. My usual usage of a momentary switch for most of my planes is instant trim, but because you're not supposed to trim a plane in iNav, I don't use it for that. So I've actually disabled my global functions that turns on instant trim for iNav planes. I don't use it. Let's see, trip GPS home. Yeah, Robert, you could do that. Another option for that momentary switch is to reset your GPS home. Yeah. Oh, Robert said that next. Yeah, GPS reset is what I use it for. So if you want a new home location, you can do that. Clay says, thanks for all your help on the TX16S. Really enjoying the new radio. Thanks. So, oh yeah, Clay, glad to help, man. 22 watching, only 11 likes. Come on, at least we can do. Yeah, guys, yeah, hit the like button. That's always helpful if you guys can hit like. There's still 21 people watching, only 14 likes. So yeah, you guys can hit like. That'd be great. I would appreciate that. And then let's see. Clay says I fly an angle a lot. Land in Acro. Yep, we covered that. Jason says this tutorial spot on. Another outstanding job. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. Glad it's been useful for you. If you guys have questions, now would be a good time to think of what they are. Robert says, I've seen some of your acrobatic landings. Yeah. Hey, I try and, when they're really good, I try and leave them in there, but if they're just annoying, then they come out. But all right. I like your touch. Done learned me something. So Clay learned something new. There goes the feed. Yeah. With the radios. Well, you know, what's cool about that is, when I first started doing this, I was so annoyed because I kept saying, well, wait a minute. I've got a perfectly good feed going on, and all of a sudden, everything's just going to hell in a handbasket. I couldn't figure it out. So now at least, I've got some kind of clue as to what exactly is going on, and I know I have to be on the lookout for the radios. I have to be on the lookout and make sure that the radios are not interfering with the feed. And certainly, 5.8 does it. And I think the other thing that I learned tonight is even though I'm on a 5.8 link, when I put the church radio on, that actually interfered with the 5.8, but it resonates 2.4 resonate at 5.8 or near there. So yeah, just because it's not the exact frequency, it doesn't mean it can't swamp you, especially when it's right next to the antenna. Okay, don't need to see the camera, just the VTX flight controller. Yeah, the camera. I didn't care about the camera condition tonight. I was just worried about getting you guys a look at the screen. Robert says, John, with iNav, the student is becoming the master. The thing about iNav, Robert, and these flight computers, you guys have heard me talk on Discord about this. I've been a computer guy for a long time. Eventually I win. It's just a matter of how many times I have to hammer it. But eventually my wife really gets annoyed because she says every time she has a complaint, all it takes is for me to walk in the room and the computer's fixed. So I think if I'm honest with you guys, you want to hear something, I'll make a confession. I think one of the reasons I probably really like FPV so much with these flight computers is because they combine two of the things that I love the most. I got my pilot's license when I was 17 years old, and I was programming computers when I was 13. So when you kind of think about it, to me, it makes a lot of sense when you put those two things together. I'm putting computers and airplanes both together, and it kind of makes sense. In retrospect, it's clear to me why I enjoy this aspect of flying so much. All right. Jedi John, always wondered about that. Nice explanation. Freaking gorgeous. I just puked in my mouth. Hey, Robert, I got the other one out just for you, man. Just to give you something to dream about and to admire. Maybe I should zoom out so you can see them in all their glory. There we go. You got to take in the entire visual there, Robert. That's just for Robert there. Okay. It'd be weird if you puked somewhere else, Robert. Angel FPV says, any idea when 2.4 OpenTx will come out? No, I don't. In fact, I haven't checked the milestones, but you did just remind me of something that I wanted to do before we finish up the night. I did want to get a browser window open and show you guys the link. Let's see. I'm going to pull that up for you guys so you can see the place to go to get information about the modes, because I mentioned that in the video, and I definitely want you guys to see that because it's worth reading. It's worth reading. This is good stuff to read about. Let me flip that over for you real quick. Give me just a second. I'll pop that up here. We're Chrome Incognito. There we are. 1 second, guys. It's on the way. There you go. Oops. What the heck is going on here? Okay, cookies. Yeah, great. Everybody wants cookies. There you go. So I'll put this link in the video description for you guys. But yeah, this is a really good guide because it walks you through the modes and the relevant settings. So it talks about the manual mode, acro mode, angle mode, horizon mode, the navigation modes, which are nav cruise, position hold, return to home, waypoints, and the additional modes. So they not only do they talk about what they are and what they do, but they talk about what supplemental features they have. For example, see how it says right here, however, you can enable alt hold at the same time as nav cruise, which instead makes it 3D cruise mode. Yeah, that's probably where I got that. So it's a really good page to kind of get your arms around the different modes, and they're very brief and to the point. So I like this one a lot. I'll make sure to provide that link so you guys have that in the video after we wrap up for the night. Robert says having them both out is what killed the feed. Too much ugly. Robert does not like my girls, my radios, Precious and the church radio. I love them, man. I love them. You know what I love about this one so much is that it's same colors that I use on the channel all over the place. I use red, white, and silver, red, white, and black. So I love that silver, man. I love it. All right. Clay says, I love the technical side of the hobby and the challenge always developing. Yeah, man. It's and you know what's really satisfying, I think, about the computers too, is that once you get them up and running, man, and they're working well, it's really enjoyable to go out and just have a nice flight and let the plane just get on a cruise. And, you know, you just kind of watch and move the camera around and check out different scenes and just enjoy it, man. It's always been very enjoyable to me. So yeah, that definitely one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the RC, one of the modes of RC flying that I've really enjoyed has been putting a computer in a plane and getting it to work right. It's always been fun for me. All right, guys. Well, listen, I don't see any other questions before I break it off for tonight. Do you guys have anything that you want to ask about the configuration you've seen? Don't worry. I'll put the links in the video for my radio configuration. I will copy it into a standalone file so you can download it and pull it in and check it out in Companion for yourself. You can tweak it. You can make changes to it. You know, have fun with it. And even if you just want to borrow some of the ideas, that's great. And I will also put I'll do a diff all, and I'll put my diff file up there as well. So you can download that and have it match up with iNav. And hopefully it'll shorten your path to getting a good working tuning configuration going like this one. And by the way, one of the really cool things about iNav is that when you have a diff file like that, you can import it and it just updates all the settings. I mean, you'll have my OSD, you'll have my 3-page OSD, you'll have my adjustment screen, you'll have my modes, you'll have everything. You know, you got to tune it for your own use and make sure your radio matches up, but you really should be able to replicate things pretty easy with that diff capability. It's very good. So let's see. It fixes my horrible, Clay says, the technical side of the hobby fixes his horrible flying. Well, one thing I'll say about iNav, and I think it's true for just about any flight computers, you got to make sure that your airplane flies first. And then when you stick a computer on top of a well-flying airplane, then you'll really have a good experience. If you stick a computer on top of a poorly flying airplane, you're going to fight it. So I would encourage you to make sure that regardless of your own piloting skills, make sure your airplane is square. Okay. I don't remember that link saying that servo auto trim, auto tune requiring manual mode. Yeah. Auto trim, you want it to be in manual mode. Auto tune, you want it to be in acro mode. And I'm not going to spend any time justifying that on this call or this video, but if you want to try it outside of those parameters, be my guest. If you want to be done with it quickly, heed what I say. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of auto trim either. I think it's just better to mechanically center your stuff, and I would say stick with that. The only reason I say that is because I was about 98% there on the Nano Talon, and I decided, you know, I'm going to try auto trim again just to see what happens, and it knocked everything out of whack. It took me a little while to figure out where those settings were saved, but I went back and undid it, and I was much happier with the plane without it. So I'm not saying auto trim's terrible and it doesn't work. I'm saying I prefer just to manually center my plane. I do it with the linkages directly. So Angel FPV says, I watch your TX16 SCNC install like 10 times, and I end up getting the max. It looks hard. Yeah, it's not for everybody. I personally don't mind that kind of stuff, Angel FPV, but yeah, whatever works for you. That max is nice, and it'll save you the work, and I think by the end of it, you're probably close to the same amount of money anyway. So Corey says, thanks a lot. Yeah, we need an 8K giveaway. Now, that's not a bad idea. Not arguing about manual, just thought the link said both in Acro, but I've crashed twice with iNav. No, man, just if you're going to do servo auto trim, do it in manual. If you're going to do auto tune, do it in Acro. That's the lesson I've learned with it. Acro mode for auto tune, manual mode for auto trim. 8K giveaway. Yeah, not a bad idea. Maybe we can do that. All right, guys, listen, I appreciate this. Has been a very fast-paced session, and we covered a whole lot of material. I hope you guys found it useful and that you can use it in your own iNav configurations. I know it's somewhat complicated, but trust me when I tell you, if you can spend a little extra time up front getting that tuning arrangement worked out, man, will it save you some time when you actually start flying with an iNav computer. You can take that to the bank for sure. So, I can't even imagine how much time I saved using this tuning configuration in flight. I can't even imagine. And it also lets you get very precise. So you can check and see, what the impact of your changes are while you're flying. I mean, that's just really valuable to be able to do that. So, hey, before we finish it off, I just want to make sure that you guys all know on patreon.com, I've got several different tiers. If you're able and your budget allows and you want to help with the channel, you can go over to Patreon, and for as little as $3 a month, which is like a cup of coffee, you can join Patreon and help me keep material coming on the channel. And with that in mind, I want to say thanks to the existing patrons. You guys are awesome. Thanks for opening your wallet and offering to help out. I do appreciate all of you. And Lynn, I will think about the 8K giveaway. We're getting real close. I was really thinking about something special for 10K, but I guess we could do something at 8K. We'll see. All right, guys, that's all I've got for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the material. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when new material hits the channel. That's all I've got for tonight. Take it easy.